We're here with Jay Larkin, President and CEO of International Fight League and a veteran of the cable industry. As a veteran of the industry, you've been in a number of areas within cable, particularly on the boxing end, for years over at Showtime. But now you're in a different ring with the IFL and mixed martial arts. What attracted you to the mixed martial arts genre?
Well, I left Showtime a couple of years ago after over 2 decades working there, and looking for something to do. I was looking for something that could be fun, emerging industries, new businesses, and MMA was getting all the buzz. Everybody was talking about this new sensation, this new sport that's going to rival boxing for fans and viewership, take on the NBA in terms of branding and awareness. I was familiar with UFC before I came on board, and I liked the challenge of it. I liked being in the ground floor of a very young industry.
Good. How does the IFL differ from the UFC and other MMA events?
Physically, we differ in several ways, Tom. The UFC, first of all, is the industry leader by far, controlling 80 to 90% of the MMA market. Their shows are very flashy, very much in the vein of WWE. A lot of lights, a lot of music, and of course the cage. And the cage has become, in many parts of the industry, synonymous with MMA. We do not use a cage. We use a variation of a traditional boxing ring, but for all intent and purpose, it's a boxing ring. From a personal perspective, I find the cage a marker of a cultural apocalypse. I really do find it a throwback to Roman gladiatorial combat, and don't like it. And again, everyone's entitled to it. I've got no problem with what anybody else wants to say.
Yeah. But isn't that sort of what draws a lot of young viewers, particularly young men, to the MMA, that whole barbaric type fight till you drop, pretty much, and with the cage and that whole scenario?
Yeah, I think that's a big part of it. I think it's a big part of the draw. The founders who created IFL, they came into it wanting to be more of a pure MMA experience, more of a pure competition experience. When I came in, I said, well, that's all good and well, but this is not a not-for-profit company, and we have to cater to some of the whims and demands of the audience. So, what's coming out of it, I think, is a more commercially acceptable, more promotable blend of the two. And it is interesting that I do believe the fans are drawn by the blood. They are drawn by. Well, that provokes the obvious question of, well, how far do you go? I'm sure that you could sell out any arena in the world by having a public beheading. How far do you go to cater to the whim of the public? And a lot of the scenes I've seen in MMA remind me of the public executions they had in the 18th century in Europe. So I think that there has to be some conscious present and an awareness of limitations.
In terms of the MMA, everyone says that the MMA is now superseded boxing in terms of its popularity among, again, young viewers and in general among ring sports fans. Having spent so much time in boxing and now over in the MMA, do you see that happening?
No.
No?
There are two distinctly different sports. They're as different as tennis is from bowling. Obviously, they're both combat sports. They're both contact, competitive sports. So that's where you want to draw those conclusions. But for the most part, boxing fans love boxing, MMA fans love MMA, and there are some crossover fans. What it is doing, where it is affecting boxing, is it's making it difficult for boxing to attract a new, younger audience. And for years we talked about the aging boxing audience, and that the new fans were not coming along to support it, and that eventually the fan base would die out through attrition. But I do believe that with MMA here now, people who want to see an exciting combat sport that involves a community, a large audience, I think their first stop is MMA and not boxing, because now they have an alternative to it. As far as it's hurting boxing, I don't believe it is at this point. Boxing is going through a renaissance. There are more good competitive bouts coming together now and in the last few months than have happened since the 70s and 80s that I can recall. We went through a very bleak period in boxing where stars or house fighters were being hand-fed opponents to build their recognition, to make them more marketable and profitable, but the public outcry and the defection of boxing fans became so great that the powers that be finally started to wake up and listen and started making very competitive bouts.